in a game. 20.
Swung on and driven to deep left. And a pass. Down for. Yankees win. Yankees win. Bernie Williams homers deep in the left field seat to lead off the 11th inning at a 1-run finish. And the Yankees beat the Orioles 5-4 to win Game 1 of the American League Championship Series. Burn, baby, burn. He's done it again.
Deep left. There it goes. Stepping into history. He's done it. He has done it. 62. Aaron Judge is the American League single-season home run leader. The AL King. Case closed.
What is going on, baseball fans? Jeremy Laracuente here for the Baseball Banter Broadcast, and we continue our series here examining the state of the franchise for each and every franchise across Major League Baseball. From championship seasons to rebuilding years, each and every team has a story. This episode of the Baseball Banter Broadcast will focus on the past, present, and future, analyzing the roster moves, the front office decisions, and what lies ahead for the Milwaukee Brewers. And we bring on some special guests from Brewers Fanatics, Jason Wong and Jack Gibbon. How you guys doing?
Doing well, man. What's up?
Good to have you guys on.
Oh, a little late here, but we're doing good. Doing good. Excited to be with you, bud.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as I always like to start with this series, just kind of giving gut reactions as to how the 2024 season went for the Milwaukee Brewers. How do you guys feel the campaign went for you guys in 2024 as we get into previewing the 25 team?
Yeah, I can start. I think you have to look at it, the regular season and the postseason, very differently. I think the regular season the team was resilient. I think they did really well. They had a new manager in Pat Murphy. They had Jackson Cherio. They had a ton of young talent on the field, and they lost about 100,000 starting pitchers to injuries. I mean, dudes were getting hit by fly balls in batting practice. Ridiculous. But they just kept finding a way to win, and that's kind of the sport of baseball. So, you had Aaron Savali, Frankie Montas, all kinds of guys taking the ball. And, they did really well in the regular season. And then you get to the postseason, and you play the Mets, and the Mets probably maybe shouldn't have even been there to begin with. And, you lose to the Mets in heartbreaking, devastating fashion. Your lockdown closer, Devin Williams, who has been unhittable pretty much his entire career, gives up, the runs that ultimately put New York on top. So I think in retrospect, if you want to take into account recency bias, it's probably pretty sad, right? Because that's how the last Brewers baseball we saw was losing to New York. Obviously Bob Uecker, that was the kind of last thing that he was doing with the team, and rest in peace to him as well. Absolutely. So I think I would say lukewarm for me. I don't know if Jake has a different take.
Yeah, I sort of came into last year thinking that it was going to be like one of those transition years. Burns was out, Woody wasn't there, the pitching staff looked good, but without that sort of bona fide ace. You're looking at Willie Adames had come off a bit of a down year. Jackson Cherio was a rookie, and you can't expect much, certainly as we saw in the first couple of months. But the team had this weird thing where, and I'm a bit of a stats nerd, so you look into it and you look at what's going on, and you look at sort of the stat lines of all the players. You're seeing how each of them individually are performing, and somehow the results that they put together are so far above what each individual was doing, and it seemed to be something I think you have to give a lot of credit to Pat Murphy for, in terms of he just seemed to be able to get them performing. It is a team game. Like when we look at baseball, it seems to be made up of a lot of individual moments of one person against another. But somehow he managed to make it more of a collective. So they were brilliant with runners in scoring position. Have been for the last 3 years. It's really weird, and I'm almost thinking they're cheating at this point. They're probably not, but it's weird. But even past that, you had the breakout of Cherio probably in the second half or from the start of June. Adames with 32 homers. Yelich got us excited, only to go down with his back injury again. Freddie Peralta didn't quite perform, but somehow, like, not a single pitcher was like genuinely poor last year. They all managed to hold like quite a high floor, and that defense behind them just played. So I was expecting a transition year, and then somehow 90 plus wins. I don't really know how it happened. But then, as Jason said, you're left with that sort of feeling of being up late. You're watching it. You see yourself take a lead in a game 3, deciding game in the playoffs. You get super excited. Sal Frelick hasn't hit a homer since he was like 5 years old, and the fence was 10 yards away. Like, this is mind-blowing stuff. And then all of a sudden, that Pete Alonso moment when you're already planning for, the division series, it's just gut-wrenching. So yeah, you're kind of left with all of that to sort of process. And when you look back at the year as a whole, unfortunately, the way baseball is, it's a crapshoot in the playoffs. But it's the lasting memory that you have until spring training starts again, and then you realize you've got to worry that, oh yes, we are not guaranteed to be there again.
Not at all. Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely a heart-wrenching season, gut-wrenching season, as you said, for the Brewers in 2024. And obviously getting the year started, not in the greatest way, with the passing of Bob Uecker, one of the best to ever do it, without a doubt. So definitely something that it will be wearing, heavy on the players that had such a special relationship with him. As we kind of transition and look towards the coming season, towards 2025, and what happens with this team, there's a lot of things that have happened, and a lot of change for the organization, and not necessarily all for the positive when it comes to some of the moves that have been made. Obviously, as you pointed out, Corbin Burns was traded off last year. This year, Devin Williams gets traded. Now that does bring you back, Nestor Cortez, Caleb Durbin. A couple of other moves that were made by the Brewers this year was Grant Anderson, Tyler Alexander just got brought on today at the time of this recording. So of the moves that have been made, what do you think is kind of the biggest acquisition for the Brewers this season?
So I think Nestor is a really interesting guy, right? He was obviously pitching in New York. He doesn't have crazy high 90s velocity. He's a crafty dude that, shakes up his delivery, does whatever he can to kind of deceive. I think Milwaukee does an excellent job of working with those guys and getting the most out of a guy who maybe tops out at 94. I think Nestor's four-seam and cutter offerings are really good. I was actually looking at his Stuff Plus, which is this weird, like, nebulous term for generally how good it pitches. The Stuff Plus on his slider, which he barely throws, is 119. So that's really good. So maybe Milwaukee wants him to use that a little bit more next year. We'll see. But for me, it's got to be Caleb Durbin. Caleb Durbin, true short king gamer, 5'6", 185 pounds. We're about the same size, about the same build, probably similar skill sets. Spent most of 24 in AAA, posted to 867 OPS, went to the fall league, raked 976 OPS. And Pat Murphy was already kind of talking about him. He was like, well, I've had my eye on this kid since he was in college. So I think already Pat Murphy's kind of thinking out how he's going to use Durbin in all these weird ways. He has positional versatility. That's going to be big because there's a lot of questions for the Brewers infield. Who's going to play shortstop? If Ortiz plays shortstop, who's going to play third? Are we going to move Terang over? If that's the case, who's going to play second? So having a guy that's 5'6" of pure muscle that could play second or third base, that gives Murph, the ability to kind of move guys around, that's going to stabilize the infield post Willy Adames.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree. Actually, like, when you look at it, the Brewers kind of traded a high-end reliever for mid-rotation starter, so they're probably getting more innings, not quite the same sort of ERA and impact. And I'd say overall, in terms of like WAR and things like that, they'd probably value Nestor slightly higher. But it's one of those things where it depends on what your team needs. The Brewers have a fantastic bullpen, so Devin isn't quite as required. Whereas obviously you see the Yankees starting rotation the way it is now. Back end of the bullpen is a little bit more of a place of need. So like I love Nestor's arsenal. You know, it's one of the things the Brewers do love is that giant sort of maximizing basically every pitch that he has. And one of the things they do love is definitely that 3 sort of fastball mix. And funnily enough, Jason likes the slider. I quite like the sinker, just in terms of giving that sort of variation in that sort of mix. Again, it grades out quite highly, though you didn't throw it a whole ton, so sometimes that can slightly skew the results a wee bit. But good sort of horizontal movement on it. Durbin's fascinating because he fills a hole. The big thing I think we'll look at with him is whether or not, you know, all his power comes from the pull side. Doesn't hit it hard, but he elevates it brilliantly. And that can be tougher against big leg pitching. You know, they're finding their spots a little bit more often. They don't allow you to do what you want to in the batter's box anywhere near as much. So manage to get away with the AAA. But, you know, it's just that, like, the guy's a baller. Pat Murphy loves him. He's just a grinder. He's that kind of dude that will just be running until you tell him to stop. If you forget to and you come back next morning, they're still going to be running. So he fits that Brewers mold quite well. Grant Anderson's sort of an interesting guy. So Hobie Milner left the Brewers this sort of off season, but Grant Anderson kind of fills that hole really well. But almost a submarine sort of lefty, like really intriguing. He left or I can't remember if it was the other way around, but like the pitch mix is really similar. And then Jack Stern actually over Brewer Fanatic did an interesting piece on Tyler Anderson. So I think, was it Jason Anderson used to play for the Brewers, his brother, to not great success. I think Darren Judge hit like 3 homers off him in one game, which was beautiful. But Tyler's an interesting one, and that he kind of mirrors Colin Ray a wee bit, was what Jack was saying. And when you look at the pitch mix again, so they've lost Colin Ray, lost Kobe Milner, kind of filled them with 2 guys who can really replicate that sort of arsenal. And one thing the Brewers like to have is a variety of looks. So whether it is the sort of submarine arms, whether it's the high arm slots, whether it's the different sort of pitch mixes, they like having a real blend in there. So they've kind of been filling holes, but they haven't really filled that hole of Willy Adames all that well, and the power that he sort of will bring. So they're looking internally for that, and then all the sort of minor roster shuffles they've kind of managed to fill quite well. So yeah, it hasn't been a particularly exciting off season. You know, I've been watching paint dry instead of following Twitter and refreshing it. But yeah, hopefully it picks up a little bit more in spring training.
No, for sure. I mean, it's definitely exciting when you start seeing those images of pitchers and catchers reporting. So, and then obviously full team workouts beyond that. So no doubt it's now starting to get to the exciting point for us baseball fans after a very long and grueling winter. Now, what I do want to say is that, you know, as a Yankee fan, kind of seeing Nestor up close for the last several years, I do think that in the way that the Brewers kind of do have that, you know, kind of whole assembly of pitchers kind of coming at you on a nightly basis, I think that Nestor really is going to fit in well with that. I also think that his cutter is something that doesn't get spoken about enough with as much as he uses it. You know, there is that combination with his four seam and then the cut mix, and then obviously that slider where he can kind of play with the depth of it. So I think that that'll be something that the Brewers will really be able to kind of really expand upon with him in this upcoming season. And it's a walk year for him as well. So it's going to be something where you're going to, you know, really try and put your best foot forward as a player to try to get to, you know, that big contract afterwards. So I think a big year is in store for Nestor for sure. Now, you know, as you said, the Brewers didn't do much when it came to addressing the loss of Willy Adames, but we know that there's other players on this roster that there are question marks as far as being able to kind of refill their own shoes. And when you look at the injury front, you know, a couple of names are listed on MLB.com's injury report for the Brewers. You know, Christian Yelich, Brandon Woodruff, and Robert Gasser. You know, beyond those three, or maybe you want to harp on one of them individually, what do you think is going to be the biggest injury concern for the Brewers heading into the 2025 campaign?
Yeah, I think to me it's got to be Yelich, right? Because I think if you think about what happened in 2019 where he fouled the ball into his kneecap, fractured it, it really took him 3-4 years to get back to being the hitter he was before. Not even at the 1,000 OPS MVP front runner kind of level, but like we're looking for an 800, 850 OPS. It took him 3-4 years to get back to that, right? Obviously, fracturing your knee, back surgery, apples to oranges a little bit there, but it's a question mark to know whether he'll be able to cook at that same level. Once he's back from that surgery, that's something that I'm thinking about, and that's going to be a huge part of the lineup, right? Without Willy Adames, you really don't got a lot of guys in that lineup that are big bats, big threats. So Yelich is going to have to take on proportionally more responsibility for driving what's otherwise a kind of middling lineup, right? I also think, Woodruff is similar. Like, we don't know what he can or can't do. A year of baseball, especially as a pitcher, is a lot of baseball to miss. I know they reported
100%.
that he's a full participant in spring training, so he hasn't had any setbacks. He's healthy now. We'll see what happens. I also know that DL Hall got another lat injury, so he's not going to be pitching for another few more weeks, according to Pat Murphy. And then, Gasser, young prospect, good arm, performed really well in the majors. Got Tommy John. We'll see what happens when he gets back. But, a lot of question marks around the pitching, a lot of question marks around Yelich and whether he's going to be able to come back or whether we'll have to wait another 3-4 years to get 2024 Christian Yelich back again.
Yeah, pitching's gonna be the big one. I think every spring training, and I think there were numbers to this because everybody was going nuts by May about the number of Tommy Johns sort of going on, and it seems that sort of that April-May period is going to get loads of them. So people just ramping up minimal off-season work or certain off-season work, but you just can't seem to replicate it or keep your elbow healthy to the point that injuries don't just pop up as soon as you go to that sort of higher level of effort. So DL Hall already with the lat strain, someone I have a weird affinity for, just because I'm thinking if that dude ever refines any sort of fastball shape, everything else is just there, and he's going to go from, he might be a bullpen arm to, he's a number 2 in our rotation kind of guy. But the other name I'd probably mention, and he's not on the injured list, but he probably will be because he can't seem to stay off it, is Garrett Mitchell. He's the type of dude that would break his knee eating a waffle or something. Like, it just stupid injuries just seem to follow this guy around. Honest to goodness. So I'm kind of hoping for an injury for a year because he's one of these incredibly exciting sort of guys who he has it all, and you're just waiting for like that final little bit to click in terms of that high fastball. But certainly someone to sort of watch and just hope he can sort of stay injury free for a little bit. I would love to see a healthy Yelich. So I started my Brewers fandom I went to my first game in early August 2019. So I think Gilly was super hot the end of 2018 and the first half of 2019. So I saw about a month of Yelich-ish, and that was me not really being a fan. Didn't have MLB TV, so I was following in game score apps, right? But I knew it was good because I was in Milwaukee once, and everybody was wearing this 22 shirt. So my dream is to like be able to experience, even if it's just like 2 months of prime Yelich. I'll be like, okay, I've seen it. I can understand it now. But like, I cannot comprehend some dude hitting like the numbers he did. They were so otherworldly. I was just like, I can't even comprehend what that actually looks like from someone not named Aaron Judge. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm pumped for it. Like every year I get optimistic, and every year the hope just slowly drains away from me as you just see that. Oh, my back. So I'm praying for that this year. I really am. Apparently, he texted. Was it Matt Arnold? I think was saying that he saw a photo basically of all the sort of inflamed parts of Yelich's back that they basically excavated in the surgery, and could not believe how much there was. So look, you may not get it for very long. You have to build up a lot of strength to recover from that, but at the same time there's the potential that he's actually able to perform at that level that he wants to. His body can move the way he wants to for a short period of time, which is all I want for Christmas. So please.
Yeah, definitely. Seeing that hot streak from Yelich is something that it was very special to watch. I think back to his time in Miami when Barry Bonds was the hitting coach, and how that was the time that really completely adjusted how good a player Christian Yelich was. because prior to that, you know, he was seen as, you know, a solid, you know, everyday kind of guy, but he took it to another level after working with Barry Bonds and refining that swing. So seeing him be unencumbered by injury to be able to kind of take that to the next level for sure is definitely a fun watch. Now, one of the guys that I do want to kind of get into with you all is who I believe is the X factor for the Brewers in 2025, and it's Jackson Chourio. And I think it's an obvious pick to make when it comes to that. But I also think that for Jackson, you know, proving that there's no sophomore slump, and also with the fact that there has not been much done for the offense for the Brewers this offseason to kind of really solidify that the loss of Willy Adames, I think that there's going to be a lot more eyes on Jackson Chourio, especially, you know, in pitching game plans from opposing teams. So who would be your selection for the X factor for the Brewers in 2025?
Yeah. So if by X factor you mean straight up special talent, different animal, same beast type of stuff, is Chourio, right? I mean, this kid is on a different wavelength. I knew it was different when, you know, first month he was like pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie, it's like 580 OPS. It was like, oh, you know, he's coming into it. He's still not old enough to drink or whatever. He got to pay the young renter fee when he goes to Enterprise. And then he started to make, when you make adjustments, that's how you avoid a sophomore slump, because it's more tangible that, oh yeah, this guy is here ready to compete at the big league level, right? Other rookies, like I think about Tyler Fitzgerald of the Giants, and he came in super hot, and then, you know, he kind of slowed down as people kind of got more info on him, and it's like, yeah, you know, he's probably not going to be able to repeat that same level of success next year. Chourio was just doing stuff better. Like, he was getting more aggressive, pounding fastballs. Like, he's legit. Also was great in the playoffs, excellent defender, all-around ball player, right? But if by X Factor, like, sometimes I think of X Factor as like the dark horse difference maker, right? Like the sneaky pick. I'm going with Garrett Mitchell. Look, Garrett Mitchell, Jake alluded to it earlier, right? He's never healthy. The most we saw of him was last year when he played a third of a season. But if Garrett Mitchell can be at 100%, and you give me 550 plate appearances of Garrett Mitchell, I think that's going to be huge, right? This guy put up a 123 OPS plus in the little, you know, time that he played. Put up 2 WAR. He had 6 defensive runs saved in center field. So he's doing it on both sides of the ball. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he will break his knee eating a waffle. I hope not. Maybe, you know, give him whatever they're giving all these kids. Whatever they gave Ricky Henderson to make him play for 20,000 years, give him that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that if Garrett Mitchell, if you give him a full season of him, and you have an outfield of Garrett Mitchell, Jackson Chourio, and Christian Yelich, that's an Avengers level threat right there. Okay, that's on some different stuff. You do not see that level of stuff in Wisconsin. So he's only 26, plenty of athletic prime left, and he's a hooper. He's a baller. So I just need to see him come through, avoid roller skating, avoid any danger. Yeah, avoid pickup basketball. Don't do that. You know, stay on the field. So that would be my X factor.
Oh yeah, no, I took Garrett Mitchell's stance here. He's a talented boy, and a very sexy one, if he doesn't mind me saying. But my X factor would maybe be it's actually collective, so it's that bullpen group. So when you look at it, they're actually, you know, usually you go into, you know, you look at it and you say, well, look, we've got 2-3 sort of higher on average guys, 7th, 8th, 9th innings. There's a couple of guys who will throw out if we really, really need to here, but most of, you know, there'll be a few there you just chuck out if you're 5-0 down. Just guts. Like, the Brewers bullpen doesn't seem to have any weaknesses. Like, when you think of it, you think of how ridiculous Brian Hudson was in the first half of the year, and even when his stuff was dropping off as the year went on, he was kind of struggling to recover. He still produced. Jared Kaney came out, he was doing like 88 with the A's. Stick him in the Brewers pitching lab. Oh yeah, 98, 99, no worries. Nick Mears came through, some of the most electric raw stuff, like lovely to watch. If he can put together anything, there's a theory he might have been pitch tipping at some point last year, which hopefully not, but should be an easy thing to fix if you just, you know, you should see like your own hitters picking up on it in spring training. Trevor McGill, similar pitch mix. That knuckle curve is dynamite. Yoel Payam's brilliant towards the end of last year. Aaron Ashby was just lights out. And then, as if that's not enough, Jacob Misiorowski has probably the best stuff in the entire set of the minor leagues. It's probably just a bit outside, if you'll excuse the pun, but for the most part. But in general, like, it's unhittable. If he throws it in, it doesn't matter if he throws it in the zone. He doesn't have the nibble. It is unhittable stuff. Like, the dude's fastball has everything you need. It's over 7 feet of extension. I think it's approaching 8 feet of extension, like down the mound. He can throw it up to triple digits. It has like 17 inches of vert, low arm slot. It's everything you want in a fastball. And then you just look at the curveball and you're like, yeah, nah, not a chance, son. And then I know we traded the Yankees Devin Williams, but we have Devin Williams 2.0 in Craig Yoho. So change up with just as much movement, only this is the really sick part. So you look at it and Devin Williams like 4-seam fastball, which is amazing. Like, it's a brilliant pitch and completely underrated with the change up. But Craig Yoho is like east to west as like the Wicked Witches sort of like side of things, because on one hand he'll throw a slider with like 20 inches of break to the left, and then he'll throw his changeup with 20 inches of break to the right. So there's 40 inches of separation off his two pitches, which is just crazy. So went from barely pitching to unhittable. So this is the Brewers bullpen coming in next year. That's not putting in the likes of the Grant Anderson that you mentioned earlier, who's probably going to make the cut. And they want some options. They have Abner Uribe, who's throwing 102, 103, going to be back next year. And you just look at it and you wonder, like, it's an embarrassment of riches. So if you're looking for X factor, the Brewers starting rotation can probably deal with going 5 innings, going a couple of times through the order and saying, there you go, guys, there's the baton, shut it down, I'm off for a nap. That'll do. So that bullpen is going to be something, and it's not gonna be the type of thing that gets a lot of headlines. Like, even the Cleveland Guardians, like, brilliant bullpen this year, but didn't really get any headlines, and people are like, oh yeah, they're really good, and this might be why. It's not as sexy as, having someone bashing 50 home runs, but it's going to be damn effective this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a good bullpen can save a team more often than not, so that's for sure. As we kind of, Jake alluded to kind of some of the prospects in the organization and some of the up and coming stars, MLB.com has Jefferson Carroll as the #1 prospect for the Brewers. What can you guys tell me about him and some of the other prospects that you're highly interested in?
Yeah, I think Jefferson, he's a solid player. He's a great catcher. I think, I think he literally got a single plate appearance last year before destroying his throwing shoulder. So we don't really know what he's going to be post injury. Obviously, like you said, I think he's the top ranked Brewers prospect right now. He's 47th overall by MLB.com. Other well-known names like Cooper Pratt, he's a middle infielder. Jacob Misiorowski, who Jake was just talking about, great pitcher. For me, I think the most interesting guy has got to be Jesus Mate. So outside of having
say his name like you want to say it, Jason.
Yeah, I'm about to say this dude's name is spelled Jesus Mate. If that doesn't tell you this guy's a special talent, nothing else should. Okay, he and Yostinson Garcia, who is a guy in the Red Sox system, like 2 best names in baseball. That's it, right? Jesus is Mate is a 56 ranked prospect by MLB.com, I think. 1013 OPS in the Dominican Summer League as a 17-year-old. You know what I was doing as a 17-year-old? I was like worrying about senior prom. This dude is taking grown men deep in the Dominican Republic. He's pretty much good at everything. I was listening to a podcast by Baseball America about him, and the way they described it was he was like a man amongst boys. Like, it was unfair for him to be at that level, and he needs to be seen. He needs to be moving up. He has natural power with excellent swing decisions and great launch angles. Like, this guy is a near perfect hitter. They were talking about his 90th percentile exit velocity is 104. Again, this kid is 17 years old, bro. Like, this kid can't even go outside by himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, he got to have parental guidance and like a permission slip to go to the farm on a field trip. And he's doing this at this age. I know that, he drew some comps to Junior Caminero, who was doing similar stuff in the DSL when he came up. And, we still have to kind of see how he handles all the different levels of the minors, from single A up through triple A. But dog, you got a guy whose name is spelled Jesus made, doing crazy stuff, hitting balls triple digits, and doing it before he's even like able to do anything by himself. So I think that as a true prospect, they're like, man, what is this kid gonna be in 3 to 4 years? It's got to be Jesus Mata.
Yeah, he's a talent in and of itself, and it's interesting, you know, when you look at like you said, like likes of Junior Caminero, and you compare sort of the stats. So people will say, oh yeah, he hits the ball hard, but like, you know, you're facing other 17-year-olds half the time. It happens, and they'll pull out people like Lazaro Montes, and like you're going to have people who just turn up. They're more physically developed, and they're going to crush the odd baseball, and it's going to look good in a, because DSL is generally a smaller sample size, 200, 250 plate appearances sort of at most. But like the guy didn't chase. He made contact with like 90% of pitches inside the strike zone. He 104, like Jason said, 90th percentile exit velocity, which is higher than Caminero. So he had, you know, when you look at these top prospects that have come out in the last 4 years, Mate is in the top 3 for in zone contact rate, chase rate, exit velocities, all this sort of stuff. And you're like, it doesn't come together like that. Not only that, he stole a crap load of bases, and he's the left side of the infield. He played a pretty solid shortstop given his size. I say given his size, it's like 6'2", but you know, there's projections that people think he might move more towards cannon of an arm, really good movement, solid enough feel for the position for that sort of age, and it's maybe a point of development in some ways, but like, this is a 5-tool dude who seems like, if someone turned around and was like, oh yeah, he's actually 22, you'd be like, yeah, that kind of checks out. But on top of that, there's a couple of interesting ones. You know, you have the big names, like you said. I'm a fan of a couple, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on Brock Wilton a little bit. So he had his face fractured last year early on, which is kind of tough to recover from, because obviously anytime a pitch is coming anywhere near, like, is it going to? And he actually struggled with his vision at points throughout the year, which can obviously happen. It could have been concussion symptoms, obviously, that you're sort of carrying forward, and as you continue playing, your heart rate's still going, those symptoms carry on. I've had about 12 of them, which is why I don't speak so good. But yeah, the other one I'm really fascinated by, and again, a little lower down, but is Casey Hunt. So the dude, undrafted free agent 2023. You don't really expect much. Came in relieving in sort of low A and dominated the crap out of people. So he got a couple of starts there. They moved to high A, got another few starts. They moved to double A. Nothing challenged this dude. He's got this gyro slider that just seems to it's just in that sweet spot of movement where it just dips right at the end. But really good pitch mix. He seems to have good command, hits the zone really well, and it's just one of those things where you can't point to too many individual pitches. The slider's brilliant, but everything else seems to just be a really good mix, and he seems to hide it really, really well. It tunnels beautifully, and hitters just look completely out of whack. So last appearance was the playoff game for AA Biloxi, 7 innings, shutout, and drop the mic, off you go, son. So the Brewers farm system is full of depth. Oh, one more, and again, this is just love of high settings. You know, you want to see these guys that you're like, this guy could be an absolute rocket star. He has a swing a little bit like Matt Olson, actually, is Eric Batonte. So 6'4", massive frame. The Brewers took him 2023. He was 17 on draft day. I think even in this draft, if you look at the first rounders, he would have been amongst the youngest people selected in the first round in 2024, which is bananas. But like, when you talk about light tar power, this dude was hitting bombs 460, 470 feet, and you're a 17, 18-year-old shouldn't really be able to do that. So yeah, no, really, it's the guy. A little bit of swing and miss to his game, but you would expect that given the age profile. So yeah, really exciting guy to sort of follow along, and if that aims at all, this dude is gonna make impact.
For sure. So now, as we kind of look again towards the the upcoming season, and I want to know, what do you guys believe is the boldest prediction for the Milwaukee Brewers in 2025?
I think for me, and we can talk about like more team specific projections later, but I think like for me, something that I truly believe in that might be a hot take is I think Caleb Durbin puts in like 200 plate appearances next year in the big leagues. Like I think he has what it takes, and I think the front office is very excited about him. Clearly, that was a significant part of the return package in the Devin Williams trade, and they haven't signed any other infielders this offseason, right? Like you still have Joey Ortiz, Bryce Terang holding down the fort, but who's the third guy? Like, are you gonna have Andrew Monasterio? Like, he's cool. Like he seems like a cool guy. Like I would be friends with Andrew Monasterio, but do I want that guy playing third base every single day in what's now a very competitive NL Central? Like, I don't know. Do I want a guy like Caleb Durbin who's scrappy, sneaky, athletic, all the terms they use to describe certain types of wide receivers in the NFL? Like, maybe. Like there's a lot of things to see there. So I think that if they really want to take that infield to the next level and try their best to plug the gap that's been left by Willy Adames, like I think Caleb Durbin gets a lot of work next year.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
You want? I mean, I didn't think of this
bold
until literally 10 seconds ago. But if you want bold, I'll give you bold. Like,
Let's go.
my mom called me bold all the time growing up. I'm ready for this. All right. Jackson Churio gets more WAR than Kyle Tucker this year for the Cubs.
That is definitely bold.
That is definitely bold. Now, There is a route to this that maybe doesn't involve Kyle Tucker getting injured. And I'm saying we're talking like Jackson Churio could go off. It could just go off. More than likely that'll happen. If it did happen, even more towards the end of the year. I still think there's some adjustments that need to be made on his part. Quite a flat swing, a few too many ground balls at times, but when he connects, he connects. So I'm like, the dude's young. He's going to be stealing bases. He's been hitting like high average. Some swing decisions, which you usually find developing as a player sort of ages. Certainly first to second year, I'm expecting to see some progression there. Like, I think there's a world where at least they're kind of in the realms of each other, and he maybe gets past them. Now, Kyle Tucker gets injured real early. I'm gonna be like, you know what? I called it, and I'm bold and great. But that's my bold prediction. So yeah, you want a headline? There you go.
So I mean that's almost along the lines of mine. Going into the season, I really do believe pretty highly in Jackson Churio, and my bold prediction was he was going to finish top 5 in the NL MVP race. So yeah, I think he's going to have a really big season this year. I think that he's going to be one of the driving forces for the Brewers, and I think he's going to have to be. And that kind of leads me into the next topic here. But how would you guys grade out the offense for the Milwaukee Brewers this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think if I'm being realistic, I got to give it like a B-, right? And I'm Asian, so B- pretty bad grade, I'm not going to lie. So, like, it's not the Dodgers or the Braves where you look at the lineup off the rip, you can kind of already see, damn, like this is a lineup of dudes, But I think they have, like, again, some scrappy guys that are, sneaky athletic and know what they are. I think, like I said, Garrett Mitchell will be a big contributor. Younger guys like Churio and Joey Ortiz will improve. I think they can continue to be on the upward trajectory. And Bryce Terang really starting to figure things out. I think he had the lowest OPS plus for any qualified hitter in his rookie year. It was bad. We're talking like 53. Man, like I get up there and hit a 53 OPS, but I can't. But like, you know what I'm saying? So, but he against fastballs, he made the biggest step forward, and that's what allowed him to be a lot better. Still not at that higher level of like 110, 120 OPS plus, but definitely better year over year. So if he can continue making steps forward, he's going to be an incredible player. But losing Adames hurts a ton, right? You lost pretty much all your power in the infield, especially since Rhys Hoskins and whatever Milwaukee got going on at first base is not really kind of what you want out of what's traditionally a slugger position. Like, we don't have Prince Fielder anymore. we don't have a guy that's giving you 30, 40 homers a year, 30 doubles a year. We're using Jake Bauer sometimes. That's how dark the situation is, to be real with you. So losing Adames again leaves a hole. Other guys like Frelick is good. I love Salvatore. He's a short king. He's like 5'9", plays great defense, great hustle, but we got to call it like it is. He has one of the lowest exit velocities in baseball. He's getting better, but is he going to be what you need to take this lineup to the next level? Probably not. If those three outfielders, like I said earlier, Yelich, Chourio, Mitchell, that's probably going to be a lot of your offense. You obviously have William Contreras, backstop as well, great, but the rest of the guys in that lineup, I don't necessarily see winning Silver Sluggers anytime soon. So, for me, as it stands right now, I'm thinking B-.
I was going to be more optimistic and harsher than you, Jason. So I was going to give them like a C- grade, but with the potential to go to either a B or like an E in this. I don't know if you do. Do you even do E's? You just go D straight.
No, what's an E, bro?
Like, do you guys not know the alphabet? I'm sorry, I have to ask. I've never heard of someone getting an E grade in an American TV show. And
Doesn't exist.
Anyway, it's okay. Doesn't make sense, but it's fine. It's wrong. Anyway, I'm gonna make it up. So E now exists. So and the reason for that being is there's a massive variance. So we can look at if I can get 500 plate appearances even from Yelich, Chourio, Contreras, and Mitchell, and I can get them somewhere close to what they're capable of. Even if 3 of those 4 hit like 70th, 80th percentile outcomes, that's a strong offense. And I think Rhys Hoskins is a really interesting one on that. So before he got a hamstring injury, probably the middle of May, and rushed back afterwards, and his whole season just cratered after that. Up until that point, mid-May, he had like 10 home runs. He was crushing the ball. It was exactly what you were looking for. We saw on opening day, we saw him giving some crap to the Mets. It was beautiful. We saw him just slugging. We were like, this is the dude. This is the dude we wanted. Came back from the hamstring injury. He rushed back because they were playing the Phillies at the start of June, and he wanted to be there for that. Understandably so, but his swing decisions, he struggled. It just seemed the movements were a bit clunky, and he just couldn't quite get out of that funk for much of the season. So I'm really curious what another sort of season, just right, body's rested, we're recovered, let's go a little bit further out from that knee injury, will do for him. And if not, there's a couple of guys coming through that I'm curious about. Ernesto Martinez Jr., just in case that name comes up later, like at the end of the season, you're like, who is this guy? You'll be like, he's got it. But yeah, I do also think there's a potential where Yelich can't recover the same form. Like, building up your back after taking that much tissue out is going to be tough. Jackson Chourio. See, if Jackson Chourio gets injured, we're going to turn around and say, yeah, this season is done. Wash it, it's done. But I also think there's just, they're so good at getting more out of their players than they should. Like, how have they got 2 consecutive seasons of low 4 ERA out of Colin Ray? How does that happen? Like, Jason, don't celebrate. He's not a short.
Hey, Colin Ray is an animal. Look, this is a side tangent. I was at a Mariners game. I live in Seattle. I was at a Mariners game. I saw a woman wearing a Brewers hat. We were not playing the Brewers. I don't know why she was wearing a Brewers hat. I was like, oh, I like the Brewers. And she's like, just straight up looked me in the eye. She's like, I live next to Colin Ray. I was like, that's hard. And from then on, I was like, this dude's a dog.
Just because he lives next to this woman who
that's all I need. That's all I needed to know, that he's different.
That is hardcore, Jace. Like, I'm totally on your side. I feel how hard he must be just for living next to this woman.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I hope. No. He's also with the Cubs now, okay? So we're legally obliged to hate him. But anyway.
I still love him.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect segue in terms of dealing with pitching. And how would you grade out the pitching staff for the Milwaukee Brewers this year?
For me, it's got to be like an A-, right? This is how I know. It's so funny because Brewers fans talk about Freddie Peralta sometimes like you're a Yankees fan, right? They talk about him like he's 2023 Carlos Rodon, where it's like this guy is pitching and they're like, oh my god, like, I can't watch. Like, it's Freddie Peralta. He's gonna walk a bunch of batters, give a bunch of hard contact. Freddie Peralta is like a high 3 ERA guy. Like, he is not as bad as people think, but it's because for many years he pitched behind Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff, and now he's like the head of the rotation. And yeah, is he like an ace in the sense that Corbin Burns was? Like, not yet, but he's definitely not bad. We got Brandon Woodruff coming back. That's huge. Aaron Savali and Nestor Cortez, we'll see what they do. That's huge. Tobias Myers, we'll see if he has a sophomore slump. I think the way that he cooked in the postseason, I don't think that sophomore slump is coming. I think he's going to continue riding that cool fastball of his and doing what he's been doing. And the bullpen, Jake already talked about the bullpen. I think the Brewers bullpen, it reminds me of the Tigers bullpen in the sense that it's a bunch of random dudes that are pretty no-name. Even in Cleveland has Clase, who's this like big guy that throws 100-mile-an-hour cutters, and everybody knows who Clase is now. Like, no one knows who Jared Koenig is, right? Like, no one knows who Brian Hudson is. These tall, lanky dudes that throw super weird, have odd arm slots, but they get outs and they know how to prevent runs from being scored. Top to bottom, even the closer situation, right? We talk about how, Jake said the Brewers have this ability to just kind of find and replace talent, right? We had Josh Hader, got rid of him, brought in Devin Williams, got rid of him. Now we got this guy, Trevor McGill, that's throwing triple digits, flamethrowers, big guy, big frame, wicked arsenal. He's probably going to be, he is going to be the closer next year. So there's no skips. It's like that one J. Cole album, 2014 Forest Hills Draft. There's no skips in this bullpen, okay? If you're an opposing hitter and you got to face that rotation and then against the 6th inning, and then you got just this endless stream of guys coming out that know how to get you out and know how to minimize your offensive capabilities, that is a big pain. So I think like top to bottom rotation and bullpen, even with injuries, I think it's the strongest aspect of the team by far. So that's why I'm giving it an A-.
Again, I'm slightly more negative, more on the B+ side. So we're real close here. But no, again, it's the lack of a true like ace, like a true leader of the rotation. I'm not sure we can count on Brandon Woodruff to be much more. Like, I think at his best this year we'll get mid rotation. I'm not sure you'll get much more than that. If you get 100 innings of that, you'd be quite happy with like a high 3s ERA. Freddie has the most frustrating pitcher in the world to watch because he could shut down anybody on his day, and then he could also just decide to walk like the worst three hitters in the league, and then give up a bomb like on a middle breaker, and then say, oh well, 4 runs, bye guys. So brilliant pitcher on his day, and he was tinkering a lot last year, so I'm looking to see a little more consistency from him this year. I think Nestor's a great add. Tobias Myers did a piece on him today. His changeup is really weird because it rises very like fastball and then just dips right at the end. Like, that's like 11 inches of vert. Like, it's weird. So yeah, I think when you're looking at the depth in that rotation as well, there's going to be injuries throughout the year. There always are. They were hit by like so many injuries last year. Like, Dallas Keuchel was pitching for the Brewers last year. Like, just not having that will hopefully be better, but they have the depth there to actually pick up the slack. And as I said, they have a really good habit of these pitchers coming in and producing. Even if they're not, they don't have to be Cy Young, but they'll keep you in the game. That bullpen comes in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you might have been 3-4 up at 5th inning, but you're staying that way, and we're coming for you. So that sort of dynamic will be interesting to play out. I do think they've got enough depth there and enough knowledge around things that I can see it going really quite well this year. But there's always that sort of concern, as I said, without that lack of an ace. And maybe that's just because you enjoy watching someone just go in and shut down. We were spoiled by prime Burns and Woodruff for far too long, really. And yeah, bring back the sticky stuff here where all those two and Peralta dominated, I'm not saying Brewers use sticky stuff, but like everybody was using it, so it was beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Definitely going to be an interesting season for the Brewers. I do kind of agree. I kind of had it as a B overall for the pitching staff. I think, again, the lack of a true ace, as well as kind of questions in the back end of the rotation, as to what you're going to get from some of those younger, more unproven talents. But I do think that your bullpen kind of brings that grade up to that kind of B level. So I want to transition now into the divisional rankings, right? Pacoda and Fangraph have you both sitting in second place with a 500 record. Both have it at 81 and 81. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on where do you think the Brewers land for the divisional race and kind of what you estimate as the win total for them.
Yeah, the projection results are definitely a little dismal, if anything, right? So I think in the division, like Cardinals, Reds, Pirates, non-concerned. Like Pirates, all they do every year is like sign Andrew McCutchen, and then like that's it. Cardinals and Reds, I don't think I've done anything really meaningful. Cubs have been super active. That's the problem, right? The Cubs have been arguably one of the more active teams this offseason outside of maybe like the Yankees and the Dodgers, right? The Kyle Tucker move was huge. I think as things stand right now, unless we see some big steps forward from the lineup or a big move heading into like the trade deadline, things like that, I think the projections are right about, spot on. I think it's going to be difficult for the Brewers with this ragtag team to compete against a big market titan like the Cubs. I think 80 wins seems reasonable. We've enjoyed several years of Brewer success in outperforming projections, but I also think in those same years, the Cubs were rebuilding after tearing down their 2016 World Series team. The Cardinals were up and down, kind of inconsistent. It just doesn't seem like they've done enough to keep up with the Cubs, right? Like they haven't done a ton to fill in what they already lost this offseason, and also haven't even done anything to keep up proactively with Chicago. So I think that 80 win total to me seems pretty realistic.
I don't know. I mean, I remember being in the same position last year and feeling the same as I am now. Like I did a podcast with a guy asked me to do it. Cubs podcaster does this what's it called, Bricks Behind the Ivy, and it was fascinating. He went on and there was a couple of them there, and you sat there and you chatted about where the Brewers were, and I was like, it's definitely a rebuild here, if we break 81 games. And I'm like, maybe we could get to 83, 84, but we could also be like 70 wins if this and this and this and this doesn't go to plan. Then 93 wins, and you're like, oh, what happened there? So you're kind of coming to the same thing of being meant to be a 500-ish team. Things aren't supposed to go to plan. Talent, when you look at the names just on the roster and the injury history, something you're like, it shouldn't be, but every single year they defy expectations. So I'd say, and I don't know if that's something you can expect, because at what point do you just say, well, actually, you've made a history of this, you've considerably got more out of your sort of personnel than we expect you to on a regular basis, year after year after year. So I'd maybe put them in around the 86 sort of win range, and probably I would say they'll be at least pushing for a wild card spot until at least September, but whether or not they fade off at any point or some reinforcements come in at that point, which would be fascinating. They do have a very stacked farm system in terms of depth, and some of them are transitioning towards the upper minors now, so that could help. Actually, Robert Gasser would be back, but it's going to be that thing of let's try and win every day. Like every day is we win today and I'll deal with tomorrow. And if they can keep that mentality and that real grit that they had to win I'm a rugby guy, and sorry if I'm rambling here. And there was this guy that said, this coach, he said, I want to win everything that requires no talent. I want to be the guy that hits someone, gets back up off the ground and is back in position immediately. I want to be the best at everything that takes no talent, and I feel like that encapsulates the Brewers. They are the best at everything that takes no talent. So, and then when the talent way to put it. Great. So yeah, I don't know if that's
definitely an interesting way to put it for sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely an interesting way to put it. So then, as we get ramping down here, I want to know, what do you guys believe is the biggest question for the Brewers heading into the 2025 season?
Yeah, it's gotta be. Can they take their regular season success into the postseason? Like we've seen it. Jake was saying, if they continue to defy expectations and exceed projections for the regular season, like you give them 162 games, the Brewers are gonna find a way to win 90 to 95 of those games. But when it comes to the postseason, the Brewers have won the division 3 of the past 4 years, right? They made the postseason 5 times since 2019. They have won 2 postseason games. I think the Seattle Mariners may have won more postseason games than the Brewers, and they made it 1 time. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, it gets too cold in Wisconsin by October, or, they're fully geared into football season. It's Packers territory over there. I don't know what it is. But they have to find a way to take whatever they're doing over 162 games over the full regular season and figure out how to, tap into that clutch gene, whatever it takes to make a deep postseason run. Like they haven't done it since they made the NLCS, and they were close that 1 year. Like, let's not get it twisted, but can they do it? I think they're one of the only teams that has made it to October so consistently, and in my opinion, so easily. Like we're talking 10-game divisional leads over second place, and then not be able to really string any sort of success together come playoff time. So that to me is a big question. I think, into 2025, can they even get there? Might also be like a supplemental question that's got to get answered before that. But, if Jake's right and they continue to be scrappy and this no talent squad, exceeds expectations, we got to see them show up in October. We got to see that no talent come through in October. We have been seeing no talent come through in October, but we got to see the other side of that coin. That's what I'm wondering heading into next year.
And for you, Jake?
I would go a little more niche here. So I'm really fascinated by the third base dynamics, and I really want to see how that plays out this year, because you have 2 such contrasting personalities in Caleb Durbin, who's a solid defender and steals bases, the thing he has in common. Literally doesn't swing and miss, but can't hit the ball above 12 miles an hour. And then you have Ollie Dunn, who can only hit the ball above 100 miles an hour when he makes contact from 1 every 500 swings. But we're talking extreme power, fantastic defense. And if you can get some sort of concession, if you can meld those 2 players together, you have all-star. But I don't know if cloning has come that far at this point. So we'll have to settle for the 2 individuals. So I'm really intrigued to see how that sort of plays out this year. Who sort of grabs the reins, and how that sort of progresses. I think that'll have a real big impact on how the Brewers season actually goes this year. As we sort of said, Willie Adames, big loss, and replacing that sort of power will probably have to come internally. Can you get more home run production with another 2 months of Churio, the way he finished the season? The final 4 months, healthier Yelich, healthier Garrett Mitchell, Reese Hoskins is going to hit more home runs, but he probably should hit a few more doubles than he did. Honestly, you could have chopped 3 legs off an elk and it would have run faster. So it's whether that sort of Ollie Dunn sort of stuff or Contreras can lift that sort of home run total and build up that sort of total internally. But that is a big ask, and it's obviously something that every team who is slightly lower ranked with sort of projections will look and say, well, this could happen. And I've learned now that maybe isn't always the way to go, but the Brewers keep lulling me into saying, actually, that is exactly what we will do. So I'm fascinated by how that all plays out.
Yeah, so definitely some interesting questions going into it, but it leads me to my final question and kind of the titular nature of this particular series that we're running. And what do you believe is the state of the franchise for the Milwaukee Brewers in 2025?
I think it's when you're in a league as competitive as the NL, where you have legitimate titans in the Mets, the Braves, the Dodgers, arguably the Padres and the Cubs, big spending teams, big money teams. It's difficult to be a World Series contender. It's difficult to even make it to the World Series, right? I think for next year specifically, we've kind of talked about the uncertainty around whether they'll even make it to the postseason. It seems less certain than it has in the past few years. For me, very personally, and maybe I'm a little pessimistic here, I think it's closer to wild card contender, 500 kind of team. Again, kind of similar to what we're seeing from projection systems than it is what we saw last year, the year before. I think that they could comfortably win the NL Central. They're not too far off. Like, legitimately, I mean, I think the Cubs are projected for 85 wins. Like, they're not like blowing the Brewers out of the water. And like Jake said, there's a lot of variability here. Like, if their young guys exceeds expectations, we get some call-ups. Prospects start to show up. If Jesus Mate, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I don't know what he could do next year. The Brewers could very well, like, it wouldn't blow my mind if they also won again next year. They hit 90 wins next year or something like that. It wouldn't blow my mind. I'd be a little surprised. I ain't gonna lie, but I'm also not gonna be like, oh wow, that's crazy. Like, the Rockies won the NL West. Like, it's not like that insane out of mind to believe in. Again, I just don't think that they've done a ton. I think that your luck kind of has to run out a little bit. Things tend to progress to the norm. Something that we talk about at Brewer Fanatic a lot is a lot of Brewers pitchers have ERAs that are a lot lower than their FIPS. And, part of that is statistical imperfection, and no number is a complete assessment of what a Brewer can do or what a pitcher can do. But, eventually things kind of come back. Reality hits you hard. So I think that we've had a really good run for Milwaukee in the past few years. I think that Cubs have really stepped it up this winter. And I think that the Brewers are getting pushed down to having to fight for the wild card or just staying above 500 in 2025.
So just to kind of piggyback on your point, so Fangraphs has the Cubs winning the division with 84 wins, has you guys at second with 81. Now, Pacoda has you guys with 81 wins at the second place spot, but they have the Cubs projected with 91. So depends on which metrics you decide to use, but they definitely have you guys close in terms of Fangraphs, with where the Cubs, they see the Cubs ending up. So like you said, a couple of things, one way or another could potentially get you into that mix. And what about for you, Jake? Where do you see the state of the franchise for the Brewers in 25?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a little more bottle in Milwaukee than there is just a little bit south in Illinois. So I'm going to back them to just about edge out the Cubs because, Greg Council's a bit of a wimp compared to Pat Murphy. So, yeah, back them just to edge
That's
it out.
a bold prediction right there.
I'm talking World Series, baby. I mean, if you're not in it to win it, why are you playing baseball? Like, these guys are winners. Do you know what I mean? Like, they go out there to compete, to win. Okay, it nearly happened last year. We nearly got over the playoff voodoo. It's coming this time. I'm like, if they make it in, I'm seeing championship series at a minimum. Okay. And it's going to be someone ridiculous like Davey Garcia or something who pitches like a shutout in Game 7 to get there. Let me tell you, it's Brewers baseball at its finest. So, edge your way in, and then we're going to have our own version of, the Diamondbacks against the Rangers sort of. Not Diamondbacks and Rangers. Yeah. We're going to have that sort of a playoff thing, We're going to have, I don't know, some team like Seattle or something making it, and then something like that, some crapshoot that like 12 people turn in to watch.
Oh man, well, those are definitely some varying takes, but some hot takes there from Jake for sure. So I want to thank you guys for joining me here to discuss the state of the franchise for the Milwaukee Brewers this upcoming season of 2025. Let everybody know where they can find you guys at. You guys do some great work, so let them know that where they can search for you guys.
Both Jake and I write for Brewer Fanatic. I think it's just brewerfanatic.com. We're both on Twitter. I'm at JasonWang7517. That's pretty much where I'm at right now. I don't tweet a lot, to be real with you. I'm not at that level yet. I know Jake be posting some crazy graphs, and he be shouting out TJ stats, Thomas Setsko like every other day. For me, I pretty much just retweet interesting things like Ichiro Fish from 2002. So, feel free to follow me, but I may not be that active. Super active on Brewer Fanatic, though.
Absolutely. Jason's like the content king this year so far. I don't post anything quite as interesting as Ichiro highlights. As I said, I'm a nerd who loves graphs. So if you like maths, I'm your boy. So I'm Brewers Blogs on Twitter, or just Jake McKibben on Brewer Fanatic. love the statistical side of things. So if you want to get into anything, drop me a message. Look for it, lads.
Well, once again, thank you guys for joining me on this installment of the Baseball Banter Broadcast. Once again, we were discussing the state of the franchise for the Milwaukee Brewers in 2025. Once again, thank you guys for joining me, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.